She hid her cursed heart from me, human, but I made it beat again. The silence of a ruined world was never complete. It breathed. It trembled. It carried the echoes of fire long extinguished, the taste of ash that lingered even when the winds had shifted. Cale stood on the lip of the valley, his boots scraping against fractured stone that glittered faintly under the planet's fractured sky. Twin moons cut jagged shadows across the earth, painting everything in silver and bone gray. What had once been a thriving outpost of the Carnith race was now a graveyard of collapsed towers, slagged metal, and glass sand. He wasn't supposed to be here. An engineer turned medic from a human station had no business crawling over war ruins, but his transponder had picked up a distress beacon. Faint, old, but human enough to demand he check. The air reeked of ozone and scorched minerals. He adjusted the respirator over his face and descended carefully, each step sending loose rocks tumbling into the quiet. His scanner beeped irregularly, confused by the interference saturating the valley. Too much radiation, too many leftover weapon signatures. And yet, beneath it, something alive. Cale crouched near what had once been a fortified bunker. Its front had caved inward, stone melted, into ripples by energy bombardment. His light flickered over charred supports, broken scaffolding, and, there, a glint, faint but deliberate, not wreckage, not natural. Armor. He pushed debris aside, every instinct screaming this was a mistake. It wasn't just armor, he realized as more of the form emerged from beneath blackened stone. It was the woman, her frame encased in a carapace of dark crystalline plating that pulsed faintly, like veins of coal catching fire. Not dead, not alive, somewhere in between. His throat tightened. The armor wasn't standard battlefield tech. It looked grown, not forged. Organic crystal lattices spread across her torso, converging at her chest where a jagged shard jutted outward like the hilt of a broken blade. Behind it, faint but undeniable, a heartbeat pulsed. Too slow, too heavy. A sound more like a war drum than life. Cale reached for his kit, then froze. Her eyes were open. Green, but strange, depthless like deep water. They fixed on him with a clarity that shouldn't have been possible in someone half buried, bleeding, maybe dying. Her lips parted, cracked and blood-stained. Yet her voice was sharp enough to cut through the valley silence. Touch me, and you doom us both. Cale's pulse lurched. He had heard soldiers beg him to leave them behind, whisper kill me with their last breaths. But never a warning like this, spoken not as desperation, but as absolute command. He swallowed and forced his voice steady. You're alive. That means I can help. Her jaw tightened. A muscle in her temple flickered like a spark. Help me. Human, you don't even know what I am, what I carry. Cale pushed aside another slab of scorched stone, careful not to jolt her frame. I know you're breathing. I know that means there's a chance. Her eyes flared with something between rage and grief. Then she coughed, a sound so wet it made Cale wince, and blood spilled over her cracked lips. It was darker than human blood, glimmering faintly violet in his beam. She closed her eyes, a faint tremor racing through her chest. The shard at her sternum pulsed once, hard enough that Cale swore the ground quivered. Her eyes snapped open again, burning with a fevered light. Back, away. But Cale didn't. He crouched closer, pulling debris off her legs. He'd done this too many times, rescuing miners trapped in collapses, soldiers half buried in blast zones. It was mechanical now. Stabilize airways, free circulation, minimize spinal stress. He reached for the shard protruding from her chest, not to touch it, but to see if it was embedded through flesh. Her hand shot up, faster than he expected from someone so broken. Her fingers, gauntleted in fractured crystal, clamped around his wrist with terrifying precision. Her strength was unreal for her state, though her hand trembled violently with the effort. You don't understand, she hissed. This isn't armor. This isn't protection. It's a lock! Kale's brows furrowed. A lock? Her grip weakened, sliding from his wrist. Her voice thinned, but her eyes held his, fierce and unwilling to yield. My heart is not allowed to beat, not as yours does. If the lock breaks, if the rhythm is free, this valley will not hold the dead it will make. Kale froze. Not allowed to beat. The words landed like ice in his veins. He glanced down at her chest. The shard pulsed again. For a second, just a second, the lock of crystalline veins glowed faintly red, and he felt it, like a vibration in his bones. A heart that was more than a heart. A drum that carried destruction. The realization should have made him recoil. It should have sent him scrambling out of the crater. But instead, Kale's breath steadied. He had lived too long in places where people were abandoned by everyone but the stubborn fools who refused to walk away. He would not abandon her. Then, he said softly, I'll make sure it never breaks. Her laugh was bitter and strangled, flecked with blood. Fool. Engineer, he corrected, and shoved the last heavy beam aside. The collapse shifted dangerously, gravel raining down. He shielded her with his body until the tremors passed. When the dust settled, her form was clear. The armor cloak of crystal was cracked in dozens of places, her skin beneath laced with burns and veins that glowed faintly blue. She looked less like a living soldier and more like a statue carved from pain. Kale worked quickly. He improvised a stretcher out of scavenged plating, layered it with thermal cloth from his pack. The entire time her eyes never left him, as if she couldn't decide if he was salvation or the last mistake she'd ever make. You should fear me, she whispered when he lifted her. Her voice was faint, trembling from exhaustion. Every beat of this heart is a weapon against your kind. Kale tightened his grip, cradling her with more care than he'd given himself in years. Maybe, but right now, it's still a heart, and hearts are meant to beat. The night stretched around them as he carried her through the ruins. Every shadow seemed heavier, every echo sharper. He knew the drones still haunted these places, scavenger machines sniffing for survivors to finish what war had started, and yet he walked on, every step deliberate, every breath measured, with her heartbeat echoing faintly against his chest. Sometimes it slowed to nothing, and he thought she'd slipped away. Sometimes it thundered so violently the very ground seemed to hum. Each time, Kale whispered, soft human words she didn't know. Stories of hydroponic gardens on orbital stations, the sound of children chasing artificial dawn, the lull of mothers singing sailors home from storms, and each time, though faint, the cursed heart answered. The refuge was nothing more than a collapsed shaft, a scar in the earth where old mining tunnels had once run like veins beneath the outpost. But to Kale, it was salvation. The twisted steel supports overhead still held, barely forming a jagged canopy that concealed them from the night sky. Ancient machinery hummed faintly in the depths. Generators, perhaps, stubborn relics that refused to die, even when their operators had long since turned to dust. He laid her down carefully on the makeshift bedding of thermal cloth and scavenged padding. She weighed less than he expected for someone armored. It wasn't the absence of mass, it was the absence of substance. Beneath the carapace of cracked crystal and engineered plating, she felt frighteningly light, hollow almost, as though the armor had carried her weight for far too long. Her breathing came unevenly, rasping through clenched teeth. He adjusted her position, careful to keep her chest steady. Every movement seemed to set the shard at her sternum glowing faintly, its rhythm half a heartbeat, half a warning. For a while, neither of them spoke. The shaft's silence was heavy, filled only with the distant drip of water and the faint buzz of Kale's portable medkit. He unpacked his supplies, his hands steady with the automatic motions of someone who had performed triage too many times, bandages, antiseptic, patches. But when he reached for her arm, her eyes snapped open again, green, sharp, unyielding. Don't, his hand hovered. You're bleeding. Infection will kill you faster than... Her lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. You think I fear infection? Human, my blood is a poison all its own. He frowned. Poison. She exhaled slowly as if deciding whether to waste words on him. Then, with visible effort, she raised her hand to the crystalline growth that bound her chest. Her fingers tapped lightly against it, producing a faint metallic chime that resonated in the small chamber. This is not armor, not shield. It is a prison. Kale said nothing. He had suspected as much from her earlier warning, but hearing it from her lips carried a different weight. Her gaze drifted to the jagged ceiling. When I was born, the chains were already beneath my skin. My people call it the curse of Lysra. My mother carried it, her mother before her, a blood gift from the war of extinction. Her voice softened, no longer sharp command, but brittle confession. It eats the strong first, turns their own bodies against them. But the heart, it saves for last. Because the heart is power. Our enemies knew that. Kale swallowed. He had read whispers in old classified archives, rumors of bioweapons engineered to target entire bloodlines, genocides disguised as plagues. But to hear her say it, alive and raw, was different. They forged a weapon, she continued, not in steel, but in flesh. My heart is both the lock and the key. If it beats unbound, it radiates death. Not instantly, not mercifully. Slowly. Cells unravel, blood curdles, bones weaken. Every living thing marked by Karnath blood collapses into ash. Her eyes flicked to him then, piercing. And yet you carry me. Foolish? Brave? Or both? Kale forced himself not to look away. He had seen too many soldiers hide behind silence, too many patients fade while pretending that they weren't afraid. He would not let her think her truth repelled him. Maybe I'm just too stubborn to believe you're only a curse, he said quietly. Something in her expression shifted. The iron mask cracked barely, but enough for him to see the exhaustion beneath. The fear. The longing. She closed her eyes. You shouldn't look at me like that. Like what? Like I am still a woman. I am chains, human. Chains pretending to be flesh. His hands, steady as ever, worked at the cracks in her outer plating. Piece by piece, he loosened fragments of shattered crystal, revealing the skin beneath. It was pale to the point of translucence, laced with veins that glowed faintly blue, forming patterns too deliberate to be natural. They curved and twisted like calligraphy, like brands burned into her by hands she had never known. Kale caught his breath. These marks are the curse, she finished. Her voice was flat, but her hand trembled as she pulled the plating further aside herself. Every beat of my heart etches them deeper. The more they spread, the closer the lock comes to breaking. The sight was terrible, beautiful, fragile, like rivers of ice beneath shattered glass. Kale forced his focus back to his work. He cleaned her wounds, his touch gentle, deliberate. She flinched once when the antiseptic burned, then stilled. For a long time, she simply watched him, her gaze sharp, searching for weakness. Finally, she whispered, Why? Why do this? You know what I am. You know I am death wrapped in skin. So why? He hesitated, bandage in hand. The truth came out rough, unpolished. Because you didn't ask for help, and that's the loudest cry I've ever heard. For a long time, the only sound was her ragged breathing. Then faint, a ghost of a smile touched her lips. You're a strange man, human. Kale almost smiled back, but the shard at her chest pulsed again, harder this time. He froze, watching as the glow beneath her veins flared bright, crawling higher across her collarbone, up her throat. Her body arched, trembling violently. Hey! He gripped her shoulders, keeping her steady. Stay with me! Her voice broke through clenched teeth. I can't! Hold it! The pulse thundered. For an instant, the chamber itself seemed to quiver, dust trickling from the ceiling. Kale felt it inside his bones, a vibration that made his own heart falter. Then, with visible effort, she forced a hand over the shard, pressing down until the glow dimmed. When it was over, she lay trembling, sweat slicking her brow, breath coming in shallow gasps. Kale's hands remained on her, steady, grounding. What was that? Her laugh was hollow. A reminder. The lock is weakening. One day, it will fail. And when it does, nothing within 100 leagues will survive. Kale shook his head, fierce. Not if I'm here. Her eyes flicked open, burning. Then you will die with me. Maybe, he said simply, but not tonight. The silence stretched, thick with things unsaid. She studied him as though she could not comprehend the shape of his defiance, as though no one had ever dared to stand so close when the curse bared its teeth. At last her head fell back against the bedding. Exhaustion claimed her, but not before one final whisper slipped from her lips. My name is Lysera. Kale exhaled softly, as if the name itself was a victory. He adjusted her bandages, then leaned back against the cold wall, eyes fixed on the faint rise and fall of her chest. In the darkness of that ruined shaft, amid the hum of ancient machines and the slow drip of forgotten water, two truths settled like anchors. She was cursed, and he had chosen to stay. And somewhere, beneath chains of crystal and blood, a heart that should not beat answered the silence with its forbidden rhythm. The third night in the mining refuge carried a different kind of silence. It was thinner, stretched taut like a wire, vibrating with something Kale couldn't name. The air was too still, the shadows too heavy. Even the steady drip of water from the rock above seemed to hesitate before falling. Kale sat awake, his back against the cold wall, tools spread out around him like a ritual circle. Lysera lay a few feet away on the padded bedding, her face pale beneath the faint glow of the curse veins that marked her skin. She slept fitfully every few minutes, twitching as if in battle with dreams. Each time her chest flared with that unnatural rhythm, Kale felt it reverberate in his own ribcage. But it wasn't her heart that had kept him from sleep. It was the sound. Faint, at first so faint he thought it was imagination. But over hours it grew clearer, scraping, deliberate, measured. Footsteps, not one, not two, many. They were not alone. Kale's jaw tightened. He glanced at Lysera, torn between letting her rest and knowing he had no choice. He leaned forward, his hand brushing her shoulder lightly. Lysera, he whispered. Wake. Her eyes snapped open instantly, green fire catching the dim glow. She did not ask questions. She did not need to. She had lived through too many ambushes to mistake that tension in his voice. Her hand went instinctively to her chest, pressing against the shard. The veins pulsed faintly as if echoing her awareness. She pushed herself upright, trembling slightly but controlled. How many? She breathed. Kale shook his head. Can't tell. More than a patrol. Less than an army. She listened. Her expression darkened. Scavengers, trophy hunters. They come after the echoes of war, sniffing for relics and survivors. Kale reached for his pack, fingers steady as he pulled free the small devices he had been fashioning for days. Improvised flares, signal decoys, holographic mirrors made from fragments of old mining lenses. Crude work, but systematic. Then let them find what they're looking for, he murmured. Lysera studied him as he set each device in place, his movements efficient, precise. There was no panic in him, only the careful calculation of a man used to building solutions with nothing but scraps. You've done this before, she said quietly. Kale offered a humorless smile. Collapsed tunnels, gas leaks, sometimes raiders. When you live on the edges of war, you learn to improvise or you die. She tilted her head, watching him. Strange. You are not soldier, but you think like one. No, he corrected softly. I think like someone who refuses to lose anyone else. Before she could answer, the sound grew louder. Metal clanged against stone, a hiss of static, the scrape of boots, mismatched, dragging. And then, voices, harsh, guttural, distorted through her breathers. Kale could not make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Cruel amusement. Predators who believed themselves unchallenged. Lysera's jaw set. She pushed herself to her feet, her body trembling but her posture unyielding. The shard at her chest glowed faintly as if hungry. "Stay back," Kale hissed. She ignored him, eyes narrowing. "If they see weakness, they will not stop. They will bleed you for parts, skin you for trophies. Better they see death." Kale cursed under his breath, but he didn't argue further. He adjusted the decoy emitters, activated the flares. Instantly, the chamber was filled with dancing lights, shadows multiplying across the jagged walls. Holographic silhouettes flickered, figures moving, crouching, retreating. Enough to confuse, enough to buy time. The scavengers entered like carrion birds, 3, 4, then 6 of them. Their armor was patchwork, trophies of the dead bolted onto rusting exosuits. Their weapons were crude but lethal. Plasma welders converted into rifles, blades forged from ship hull fragments. Their visors gleamed with hunger as they swept the chamber. And then they saw her. Lysera, standing tall despite her trembling frame, eyes burning, crystalline veins glowing faintly through her torn plating. The leader snarled something guttural, raising his weapon. A laugh echoed through his mask. Kale's devices activated at once, flares bursting in blinding light, holographic shadows darting across walls. Confusion broke through the scavengers' ranks, their weapons swinging wildly at illusions. Lysera moved. Her blade was nothing more than fractured crystal pulled from her own armor, but in her hands it became liquid fire. She lunged, her movements raw, desperate, but every strike landed with lethal precision. One scavenger collapsed instantly, throat pierced. Another screamed as her blade carved through his arm, sparks flying as cybernetic implants failed. But she was slower than she should have been. Kale saw it in every stumble, every too-late parry. Her body fought against her, wasting strength she no longer had. And then, her heart slipped. Kale felt it before he saw it. A single violent beat that shook the chamber like thunder. The shard at her chest blazed red, the veins across her skin igniting in a web of light. The scavenger nearest her froze mid-lunge, his body convulsed, metal implants sparking, eyes bulging behind his visor. He collapsed, smoke rising from his mouth. But it wasn't only him. The fungal growth clinging to the cavern walls withered instantly, curling into ash. The faint hum of machinery faltered, gears seizing. Even Kale felt it, a shudder through his bones, a brief suffocation in his lungs. Lysera gasped, clutching her chest. Forcing her hand against the shard, she dragged the beat back under control, the glow dimming. Sweat poured down her face, her body trembling violently. Kale caught her before she fell. "Lysera, don't!" Her voice cracked. "Don't touch me when it breaks. You'll—" But he held her tighter. "If your heart kills me, then let it. But I won't let you face it alone." Her eyes widened, searching his face, disbelief warring with something softer. For an instant, the world shrank to the two of them, the scavengers, forgotten, the cursed weapon inside her forgotten. Just his arms around her, steady, unyielding. Then another shot rang out. A plasma bolt seared the wall inches from Kale's head. Reality snapped back. Lysera pushed herself upright, rage replacing fear. She moved again, blade flashing, cutting through the remaining scavengers with brutal efficiency. Kale's decoys confused the rest, luring them into shadows where her strikes found them. When it was over, the chamber was silent again. The scavengers lay broken, their weapons smoking, their bodies still. Lysera collapsed to her knees, her blade clattering from her grip. She pressed both hands to her chest, gasping. The veins still glowed faintly, as though the curse whispered just beneath her skin, hungry for release. Kale knelt beside her, steadying her. "You're bleeding again." Her laugh was bitter, ragged. "I am always bleeding. Then let me stop it." She turned her head, eyes meeting his. There was no command in her gaze now, only exhaustion, and faintly trust. "Maybe," she whispered, "maybe you are the bigger fool than I thought." He smiled faintly, wiping blood from her cheek. Or maybe I'm just the one who finally sees you. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Her head leaned against his shoulder, her cursed heart trembling against his chest. And though the air still smelled of smoke and blood, Cale thought, just for that instant, that maybe survival wasn't enough. Maybe it could be more. Outside, the night stirred again. Far off, deeper echoes rumbled, the sound of machines older than the scavengers, still hunting, still remembering war. But for now, in that ruined refuge, there was only the rhythm of two hearts. One fragile, one cursed, both refusing to stop. The valley did not sleep after the scavengers died. It watched, it listened. Cale could feel it in the way the air vibrated, the way the rocks seemed to hum beneath his boots, as though some ancient predator stirred beneath the earth, roused by the pulse of Lysera's heart when it had slipped free. They had to move. The mining refuge was no longer safe. Smoke from the skirmish curled upwards through cracks in the ceiling, a beacon to anything still hunting in the ruins. And there were always things hunting. Cale helped Lysera to her feet, his arms steady around her waist. She leaned heavily on him, but her steps were proud, deliberate. Even broken, she carried herself like someone unwilling to surrender. They followed the valley's jagged path until dawn bled over the horizon, painting the sky in bruised shades of violet and ash. The silence between them was heavy, but not empty. Each of them heard the unspoken truth. Something worse than scavengers was coming. By midday, they found it. The structure loomed at the far end of the valley, half buried in melted rock. Its spires had once been sleek, silver white, the design unmistakably advanced. But centuries of bombardment and neglect had warped them into blackened claws, stabbing at the sky. The doors, if they had ever been doors, were little more than jagged teeth of alloy fused together. Lysera froze. Her breathing hitched, the veins across her skin glowing faintly in rhythm with her racing pulse. "This place," she whispered. "I know it. I was here." Cale frowned. "Here?" Her eyes burned with memory. The facility, where the curse was born, where they forged it in our blood. The words hung like smoke. Before Cale could respond, the earth trembled. A deep vibration rolled through the ground, rattling loose stone. Dust cascaded from the warped spires. Then, with a groan of ancient machinery, the fused doors cracked open. Something stirred inside. A shape emerged, tall, skeletal, forged from metal and bone. Its limbs moved with mechanical precision, its head a hollow helm with burning red eyes. But it was not alive. It was worse. "Warlord AI," Lysera breathed. Her voice was sharp with recognition. "A sentinel of the old wars. It should be dead." The construct's voice rolled out, metallic and guttural, amplified through centuries-old speakers. "Target acquired. Karnith bloodline anomaly." Its gaze fixed on Lysera. Her veins glowed brighter, responding to its recognition. "Containment protocol, failure. Termination protocol, initiated." Cale's breath caught. "It knows you." "Of course it knows me." Lysera's jaw tightened. "It was built to. The curse was its creation, its masterpiece." The AI raised an arm. Energy built along its skeletal frame, humming like a storm trapped in metal. Cale shoved Lysera behind cover as the first blast tore across the valley. The impact carved a trench through stone, molten rocks splattering like liquid fire. They scrambled into the ruins of a shattered tower, hearts pounding. Cale's mind raced. His tools, his traps. Against scavengers they had been enough. Against this? Against an intelligence built for genocide? He looked at Lysera. She was trembling, her hand pressed desperately against her chest shard. The veins crawled brighter across her skin with each passing second. "The lock," she gasped. "It's cracking. The fight. It's stirring it." Cale grabbed her shoulders. "Then hold it. You can—" Her eyes snapped to his, blazing. "Do you not understand? If it breaks, everything here dies. You, Me. Even that machine. My heart was designed to be the final weapon. The last curse of the Karnath. Another blast struck the tower, the shockwave sending debris raining down. Kale shielded her with his body, gritting his teeth as shards cut into his arms. We don't have a choice, he growled. If that thing kills us, the curse doesn't matter. We fight. Her laugh was bitter, ragged. And how do you fight a warlord of the old ages, human? With scraps? With stubbornness? Yes, Kale said fiercely. Because scraps and stubbornness kept me alive this long, and because I refused to lose you. She stared at him. For a heartbeat, her mask of command cracked, and he saw the woman beneath, the fear, the exhaustion, the longing. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to speak, but another explosion swallowed her words. The AI advanced, its steps shaking the ground. Kale grabbed his pack, his eyes darting to the cracked ceiling of the ruin. That thing's heavy, too heavy. If I can bring the structure down on it, it will rise again, Lysera snapped. It always rises. Only one thing can kill it. Her hand pressed hard against her chest. Kale froze. No. She met his gaze, tears gleaming at the corners of her eyes. Yes, if my heart breaks free, the curse will consume it. The warlord will die. But so will you. No. Kale shook his head violently. We find another way. There has to be another way. But her expression was resolute, carved from sorrow. This is why I was made, why I survived when my warriors did not, to be the weapon, to end what they started. She stepped forward, drawing in a ragged breath, her hands slipping from the shard. Instantly the glow flared, veins igniting in a blazing web of light. The chamber quivered, the air thickened. Kale felt it pressing against his lungs, suffocating. No! He caught her wrist, dragging her back. You're not a weapon. You're not chains. You're Lysera. The AI loomed closer, charging another blast. Its voice echoed. Release containment. Fulfill design. Lysera's knees buckled. It's calling me. It wants me to break. Kale, I can feel it. The lock won't hold much longer. Kale's mind raced. He had seconds before her heart unleashed death, before the AI reduced them to ash, and then it struck him. If the curse was rhythm, if her heart was the lock and the key, then maybe, just maybe, it could be steadied, redirected. He grabbed both her hands, pressing them flat against his chest, over his own heart. Then let me carry it. Her eyes widened, horror and disbelief colliding. You can't. It will burn you alive. Maybe, he said, voice steady, but if it kills me, it won't be alone. Not if I die keeping you here. The AI fired. The blast tore through the ruin, shattering stone. Debris rained down, smoke choking the air. And Lysera's heart broke. The shard at her chest split with a sound like glass screaming. Light burst outward, red and violet, flooding the chamber. The veins across her body ignited, glowing so bright they seared Kale's vision. The curse roared. The AI staggered, its frame convulsing as the radiation of death poured through it. Metal warped, circuits burned, its red eyes flickered. Lysera screamed, her body arching violently, every beat of her heart unleashing another wave of annihilation. The walls cracked, the ground buckled. Kale felt his lungs seize, his vision blur. The curse was eating him alive. But he did not let go. His arms locked around her, his heartbeat slamming against hers. He forced his rhythm into her, steady, stubborn, defiant. Listen, he gasped. To me, to this. Not the curse, not the war. Me. Her eyes, blazing, broken, found his. Tears streamed down her face, but her screams softened, twisting into a sob. The curse stuttered. The light flickered. The AI collapsed with a final groan of tortured metal, its frame dissolving into molten slag. The valley shuddered, then stilled. Lysera sagged in his arms, trembling violently. The glow across her veins dimmed, fading back into faint threads beneath her skin. The shard at her chest was cracked, but intact, half broken, half sealed. She looked at him, her face pale, her lips trembling. You steadied it. Kale's vision swam, blood dripping from his nose, but he managed a faint smile. Told you, I don't let go. Her head fell against his shoulder, her tears hot against his neck. And in the ruins of the valley where the curse had nearly consumed the world, two hearts beat, not in death, not in war, but together. Dawn bled slowly over the ruins, painting the shattered valley in pale gold. For the first time in weeks, the air did not vibrate with threat. No scavenger laughter, no drone hum, no warlord machine grinding its endless program. Only silence. But this silence was not empty. It was waiting. Kale sat against a half-collapsed wall, his chest heaving, every muscle aching. His vision swam from blood loss and exhaustion. But he was alive. Alive because the curse had faltered, because somehow he had forced his rhythm into hers and steadied what was never meant to be steadied. Beside him, Lysera stirred. Her body was trembling, her veins still faintly glowing, but not blazing with death. The shard in her chest was cracked now, jagged at the edges, but intact, like a cage that had split without fully breaking. Her eyes opened slowly, green, exhausted, human in their vulnerability. You stayed, she whispered. Kale gave a tired smile. Told you, I don't walk away. Her hand lifted weakly, trembling as it brushed against his chest. Your heart, it held mine. I felt it. Every beat, it drowned the curse for a moment. No one has ever done that. His fingers closed over hers, steady. Then maybe it's not just a curse. Maybe it's waiting for something worth beating for. For a long moment she was silent, her gaze locked on his. Then, slowly, tears welled in her eyes. They slid down her dirt-streaked cheeks, carving clean paths through the grime. I was born believing I was a weapon, she said, voice trembling. Every glance, every touch reminded me of what I carried. I thought the only mercy left was to die before it broke. But you looked at me as though I was still a woman. And now I think I want to be. Kale exhaled softly, resting his forehead against hers. Then I'll be here. They did not stay in the valley. Kale's wounds needed tending. And Lysera's lock, cracked but not shattered, needed stabilization before it unraveled again. With effort, with pain, with countless rests, along the way, they made their way toward an abandoned outpost at the valley's edge. The facility was old but not dead. Its walls still hummed faintly. Its gardens, once hydroponic labs, overgrown but alive. They found power, water, shelter. For the first time since meeting her, Kale dared to breathe without tasting ash. Days blurred into weeks. Kale's arm healed badly, scarred but functional. His ribs remained sore, his body slower than before. But he was alive, and in those scars he carried a reminder of why. Lysera changed more visibly. The glow of her veins softened day by day, receding slightly beneath her skin as though hiding again. She could walk without trembling now, her movements graceful in a way Kale had only glimpsed beneath the weight of armor. The shard in her chest remained, cracked but quiescent, a reminder of danger but also of choice. And each night, when the false lamps flickered on in the outpost gardens, Kale would sit beside her as she leaned barefoot into the soil, her eyes closing as if drinking the quiet. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't need to. It was Lysera who chose the place. The memorial garden stretched along the facility's northern ridge, a narrow patch of earth where ancient caretakers had once planted trees from far-off worlds. Many had withered in the war, but one remained, its trunk twisted, its branches pale silver, its roots clutching the soil like stubborn fingers. Lysera knelt there one morning, her hand resting against her chest. Kale stood nearby, watching, unsure. "It's time," she said softly. He frowned. "Time for what?" Her eyes opened, and in them he saw something resolute. Not despair, not resignation. Something gentler. To bury the chains. From a satchel at her side, she drew out fragments of crystal, pieces of the plating she had shed, shards of the cursed lock that had cracked during the battle. They glimmered faintly in the dawn, veins of blue light flickering through them like memories of lightning. Kale's throat tightened. "You sure?" Her lips curved in a faint smile. "They carried me when I was weak, protected me when I believed I had none. But they are not me, not anymore. I want them to rest." Together they dug. Kale's hands, still scarred and aching, worked the soil with slow care. Lysera's fingers, long and elegant, placed each shard into the earth as though laying down ghosts. The chest fragment went first, the cracked cage that had bound her heart, then the gauntlet shards that had steadied her trembling hands. Finally, the smallest piece, a sliver of crystal that had once sealed over her throat, hiding the sound of her breath from the world. "You were faithful," she whispered, voice trembling. "You carried me when I could not carry myself. You bore the weight of my curse, and for that I honor you. But I will not wear you again." They covered the fragments with soil, layer by layer, until nothing remained but a mound beneath the silver tree. Lysera placed a smooth stone atop it, a tradition of her people, she explained, to mark where warriors rested. Kale watched her, his chest tight. "Is this a death, then?" Lysera rose slowly, brushing dirt from her hands. She turned to him, her eyes steady, her expression soft. "No, it's a transformation." For the first time, she stood without armor, without chains, without fear. Just a woman, scarred but unbroken, her cursed heart still beating, but no longer defining her. Kale reached for her hand. She let him take it. Her skin was warm, alive, steady. "What now?" he asked quietly. She smiled, faint but genuine. "Now, we walk forward." The next morning, they left the facility. Kale moved slower than before, leaning on a makeshift crutch for his still healing leg. But he did not mind. Every step was proof of survival, every scar a reminder of what they had overcome. Lysera walked beside him, her clothes simple, practical, her hair loose in the breeze. No armor, no cursed plating. Only the faint glow of veins beneath her skin. Still there, still a warning, but no longer a sentence. The sky stretched wide above them, painted in rose and gold. Ahead, a small transport ship waited on the landing pad, engines warming. A vessel that could carry them to the orbitals, to healing, to something resembling a future. But neither of them hurried. They walked slowly, their hands entwined. The silence between them filled not with dread, but with promise. Lysera glanced at him as they neared the ship. "Your heart," she said softly. He raised an eyebrow. "What about it?" Her lips curved in a fragile smile. "It kept mine from destroying the world, from destroying me." Kale squeezed her hand gently. "Then let it keep doing that. As long as it beats, you're not alone." She looked at him for a long time, her eyes bright, her expression unguarded. Then she smiled fully, genuine, radiant, transforming her face from warrior to woman. Behind them, the memorial garden caught the morning light. The silver tree shimmered, its branches glowing faintly, as though acknowledging the fragments buried beneath. The chains were gone. The weapon was gone. Ahead, the future waited. And between past and future, they walked. Two survivors bound not by war, not by curse, but by the stubborn rhythm of two hearts that had chosen against all odds, to beat together.